time, so we will go ahead and get started. First, I would like to welcome you all to our second day of the 2022 Network of the National Library of Medicine virtual symposium, research symposium, advancing engagement through research, new trends and opportunities. And we want to extend our thanks to the many RMLs and offices and centers that had contributed to helping us make this event a success. So thank you all for being here. Regarding evaluation of the program, we will have today at the end of the day, there will be a link put on the top of the main page after you're logged in for where the lobby is. That will say evaluation, and you can go in there and fill out the evaluation. And if you are interested in getting the CE credits for the Medical Library Association, once you finish the evaluation, it'll walk you through the process to get that also. And you can get 10 MLA CEs for attending this. The session is being recorded. It'll be made available later on, maybe today, but if not, after the symposium is over. And it'll be available for 30 days here on this platform. And then will be uploaded to the NNLM's YouTube channel also. So you'll be able to enjoy Sally's presentation as many times as you would like to in the coming months. Okay, so let me move on and introduce our speaker for this session. We have Sally Gore with us. Sally is the manager of research and scholarly communication services for the Lamar Souter Library. Did I say that correctly?
It's Souter, but
Souter. Okay, Lamar Souter Library, the University of Massachusetts Medical School. In this role, she oversees the library's collaborative efforts with basic science and clinical researchers on campus, including expanding support and instruction in data services. Her department leads all scholarly communication endeavors for the library, including provided bibliometrics analysis, tracking research impact, ensuring funder-based public access compliance, promoting open science initiatives, and managing e-scholarship at UMMS, the university's institutional repository. Sally also serves on the board of directors of the Medical Library Association and as the associate editor of the Journal of E-Science Librarianship. Prior to her current position, Sally served as a research evaluation analyst for the University of Massachusetts Medical Center for Clinical and Translational Science. She has been an NLM grant-funded informationist at the Lamar Souter Library, UMass Medical School, a reference and instruction librarian, and a consumer health librarian. So Sally's kind of covered all the gamuts of working to support research. She holds an MS in Library and Information Science from Syracuse University, an MS in Exercise Physiology from Ithaca College, a BS summa cum laude in Sports Medicine Exercise Physiology from the University of Southern Maine, a Master of Divinity from the Southern Baptist Theological Society, and a BA in Philosophy from James Madison University. Sally also writes a blog, A Librarian by Any Other Name, and she can be found on Twitter at Mando Sally, and that's because she plays a mandolin. Please use the chat feature for your questions. Put them in the chat feature, and I will monitor them, and we will address them at the end of Sally's talk. Sally, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. Yesterday, Heather asked if I just wanted to use that same bio that I'd sent in. I forgot the bio that I sent in. That's a long bio. That's a lot of stuff. Anyway, thank you for the invitation to speak today. Thanks to all of you who are joining in this morning. And thanks so much to all the PIP folks who worked so hard to pull this great program together. I do have a few friends and colleagues amongst that group, and a personal thanks to you all. Yesterday was really terrific, and I only hope that I can do justice to that by starting off the second day the same way. Oop. Oop. If my slides will advance, that would be good. Hold on. There we go. So I really have only two learning objectives kind of for the next hour. You can call them goals or hopes or dreams. The first is that any librarians, particularly research librarians in the biomedical sciences world who are tuned in today, will learn at least one new service or program that you might pursue in your work. And the second is that I do hope there's a researcher or two out there who's watching and be taking part today, and you'll have a light bulb aha moment when it comes to the skills and expertise that your librarians can bring to you. And hopefully you will utilize these in the future. Before I begin, I also want to acknowledge my colleagues and team here at the Lamar Suter Library who have worked side by side with me for many years, past, present, and future. I say future because yes, we are hiring. So if anything I say today piques your interest, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to talk about it. I've been really fortunate to have a great team for these many years. And we've done so many sorts of things that we developed and evolved over the time into what is today our current department. Also, thanks to Bart Reagan, to KT Vaughn and colleagues at UNC and the UCF Libraries Scholarly Communications team for all the published work on today's topic. Their writing, as well as my own experience, is really the foundation for a lot of what I'm going to say today. I also reference here this Kilborn article for a big picture. It's a good big picture of the biomedical research workflow and process as a whole. And these are all really essential and helpful resources related to library services throughout the research life cycle. So I'm going to begin with a story. It's a singular story, but it represents so many other experiences that we've encountered over the years. A few years ago, I was invited to be part of the National Library of Medicine's Board of Regents working group to modernize clinicaltrials.gov. It's a working group representative of many stakeholders related to CT.gov. There are physicians, there are clinical researchers, there are community engagement researchers, there are research coordinators, both from academia and industry. There are patient advocates, there are those who oversee institutional review boards, and then there's me, the medical librarian. When I first started working with this group, I kind of naively believed that all NLM working groups must have a librarian on the team because it is, after all, the National Library of Medicine. But I've learned that this isn't the case. And I've also learned from NLM staff leading this particular working group that how thankful they are that a librarian's perspective is part of this working group. Maybe it will have a lasting effect for some other things, we'll see. But regardless, the process of working with this group has been a really clear example of how all the different people involved with research have very different perspectives on the process. And they're often focused on their trees, or maybe there are one or two trees in the forest that they relate to on a whole. But because of the nature of our work in libraries, we're afforded a different perspective. We're able to see both of these things, the forest and the trees. We work individually with stakeholders at different points along the life cycle, and thus we have an understanding of that view. And because we have all of these different encounters along the research cycle, we're also afforded the chance to see the forest. The big picture and all the parts kind of working together. And this is a very valuable asset, something not to be forgotten or not to be taken for granted. It's something quite unique to our profession. I first began thinking about our roles and the different opportunities we might have as research support librarians when I worked as an embedded informationist on several grant-funded research projects here at UMass. And the experience was really boots on the ground work to understand the research process. to be a part of a research team, an active and engaged part of a research team, and to raise the awareness of groups around campus as to how our expertise within the library was helpful to their own work. And it also helped me really understand the different research enterprises on our campus, both basic science and clinical, and how each give us different opportunities to engage. And then, as Heather mentioned in the intro, I worked in the library for 10 years, and then I spent about 3 years working for our Clinical and Translational Science Center before coming back to the library about 5 years ago or something like that. And that was also a really great opportunity to kind of understand the whole clinical side of research, which was not something that we had focused on that much from the library. It was something really growing within our university. So it also afforded a lot of opportunity. Oops, there we go. Oh no, I lost my oh, you do these little, there we go. And this is a schematic that's tweaked over the years that we show to every incoming PhD class here at the med school. We try to get at them at the very beginning. So they start thinking about the workflow of research and all the places we might be able to help. One of them didn't come up. Oh, goodness gracious. There we go. We also show it to new faculty, to seasoned faculty, to administrators, to research coordinators, to anyone who will really listen to us, because it's this ongoing work for sure to stay in the minds and in the right in the thought process of the folks involved in research here. There are certainly aspects of the work we do that readily come to mind for our folks. Help with searching, help with managing citations, copyright issues, things around publishing, that they think of the library pretty regularly or readily. But, and these are all really important and foundational parts of our work, but there are a lot of other things that we do that we're able to bring to the table. So for the next few minutes, I want to unpack some of these for you. Feel free to add others to the chat. I'm not going to look at it because it will distract me like squirrels and the dog. I'm not going to do that. But for the next few minutes, we're going to talk about those. And if you have things you can add, please do, because that's really how we grow all of our services, by sharing with one another what works for us and what we've tried in the past. I don't know. I must be clicking a little too fast with my thing. And I also want to apologize. I hope you can't hear that beeping. There's a big machine right outside my window, but we tested before. Hopefully you don't hear it. So one of our first efforts, I have to say, in developing a scholarly communications and research support department here in my library grew out of the NIH public access mandate that took effect as law back in 2008. And we probably worked beginning in 2006, developing a strong relationship with our Office of Sponsored Programs, one that I'm so grateful continues to this day. And we became the go-to spot for them to send anybody and everybody who had questions about the policy and to sort of help work through this. And this remains really an important part of the work that we do. And it always peaks, around progress report times when people, despite the fact that a law has been in effect since 2008, not everybody still has trouble with some of the things, not on their side, but, all kinds of things go on. And then we were once the library, was once the place where people physically gathered on campus. They had to be here and they would bump into one another and they would build collaborations and things like that. And it's interesting that we see today new buildings being built on campuses that try to replicate this same interaction, because people aren't coming to the library, but maybe they will bump into each other in the cafeteria, or maybe they will, if you intersperse different disciplines on different hallways, they'll kind of spark this, pollinate this collaborative sort of environment. And when this used to happen in the library, we would know lots of people, but again, kind of like that very same experience of working on the working group and seeing that whole forest, we still, because of the nature of our work, we reach out to lots of different people. And so we do tend to know a lot of people on campus and know a lot of things that are going on. And what that allows us to do is really provide context for people. People just come to us for questions about who can offer support for this, or who can, where are some places I could go for funding, and what are some tools I can use to find, to manage my project, or to find sources of money, or to find other collaborators. And these are things that we know, and it's just a really basic sort of reference help that we can provide in this early stage of the research life cycle. Similarly, we do a lot of work in formulating research questions, and I will tip my hat to our education and clinical services librarians, which is the other professional department in our library, kind of our sister department. They do an awful lot of help in this area, and do a lot of work with systematic reviews and things along those lines that my department doesn't necessarily do. But we also have librarians who sit on the IRB and on the IACUC, and who provide resources there, who review articles. I was thinking about this earlier today, that the IRB, in addition to the IRB, there are also study groups that kind of review proposals before they get to the IRB, so that they're really ready to go through that process. And we don't have any representation on any of those teams right now. And I was just thinking that this morning, maybe something worth reaching out to. But, and again, understanding the compliance issues, and we're, for the publishing aspect, or the public access mandate, of course, we're well versed in that, but also the upcoming data management policy that will go into effect in 2023, next year, from NIH. Our data services librarians are working to lay the groundwork to support that in the same way that we've done helping around complying to the public access mandate. There we go. I'm going to have this down by the time I get to the end of my slide. So in terms of the part of the research lifecycle where we look at experimentation and data gathering and things along those lines, this really has been the growing area of research support from the library over the last at least 5 years, if not a bit more. And of course, we try to offer the services we can here to support that. Things around managing data, things around assigning proper metadata. These are things that librarians have been doing for a really long time, and we can add to that. Things around cleaning data. Our data services librarians have taken the library's library carpentries workshops and become certified instructors for that. So not only can they teach other librarians, but they can teach a lot of our folks on campus how to use the tools to help them clean data, to help archive data. Our institutional repository can handle certain size data sets for people and help to make those available. We can help with managing workflows. We can help support our IT department, who provides the major support for electronic lab notebooks, but we have a librarian here who also is really knowledgeable about it as well, so it can kind of be a backup and be a support for that as well. The library certainly provides access to analytic tools, data, statistical software and things of the like that we can provide. And again, as I mentioned, we're preparing, helping people to start think about data management plans and data sharing plans that are coming down the line, and understanding, of course, data standards, all of these things. And if you had the chance to attend Lisa Federer's talk yesterday, she really did a great job of just sort of outlining how all of these things work in her role at NLM, and how you might be able to use some of the same for yourself in your own place. So if you didn't have a chance to see her talk, they'll be available. I'll go back and give it a go. When it comes to writing, we found all kinds of things that we can do. Data visualization has been an interest of mine for quite some time, along with making infographics, something I kind of got into when I was over working with our CTSA. And then it's also an interest of one of my colleagues here in my department. And so we have sort of developed a little bit of a service around that. Tess likes R and likes to teach people that way. I like Excel and teach people that way. And we're able to just work in that sort of venue and help folks in with that. Interesting, I had helping with high quality imaging. And then just this morning, like before I came on here, I had a question from a doctor who was trying to submit some a paper to a journal and he needs his graphics done to a particular resolution. And he's like, can you like help with that? And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, we can, because I just happen to have that software on my computer. So we can help with things like that, odd little things. But he just said, it was one of those interesting things where he was looking on the library website, just looking for help, and reached out, and we're always happy to do that. We provide scientific, or one thing that we're hoping to do is really provide scientific writing support. That's a kind of a big future goal here within our library, working closely with our administrators and deans. It's something that students really want, and something that we know that there would be a role for us to support there. We have a librarian who loves to do coding. It's not me, and but it can offer some support there. Has done some workshops and just reached out with students and provided help there. We certainly provide citation support, and a lot of times we do things in terms of when people are preparing posters or doing lectures. There are a lot of questions around copyright, or what can I present at this conference or that conference, and what permissions do I need? And we do a lot of reference help in that area for folks. And then again, when it comes to publication, and as I mentioned at the beginning, there's certain aspects of what we do that come to mind readily for folks. And this is certainly one of them. People often ask us where we can publish. You know, I have this article, what are some tools I can do to find the right place to publish? We talk a lot about, journals. Impact factor isn't necessarily the only thing you need to look at. We've done some workshops, a number of workshops on avoiding predatory publishers, predatory conference folks that are out there, all the emails that folks get, soliciting their work, and we try to help people understand the good tools that are out there that can help you understand who are legitimate publishers to work with. We certainly understand and negotiate authors' rights for folks. This, of course, grew out of the public access mandate work that we started so long ago. Publishing preprints and identifying preprint servers. This has just absolutely exploded, of course, over the last 2 years with COVID. Preprint servers have been around longer than COVID, but what we saw, of course, with the pandemic was the use of them so much more, and just this rapid acceleration of open science tools that sadly it took a pandemic for that to happen, but there are a lot of positive things that came out of that, this experience that we can hopefully look towards in the future and how we can support that. We've been, of course, helping people understand what a postprint is for a long time, also along the public access mandate. What can you put in PubMed Central as a postprint, or what can you put in your institutional repository as a postprint and not violate any of your copyright things that you have signed or agreed to with your publisher. And then, of course, the whole sharing again with the open science movement, sharing publications, sharing data sets, open access, and all of that. We've worked and answer a lot of questions here. And another thing that we're trying to develop, we don't have a fund on campus right now to support authors in particularly early faculty or junior faculty who don't have large grants that they're working on to help support the publication fees for journals. And we're looking to maybe be able to leverage some other departments on campus and maybe hopefully set up a fund for that. So, and that's certainly something that libraries all around the world, or all around the country have, or the world have been able to do. And then archiving all the outputs, again, a big part of our, excuse me, institutional repository. So this is one of my favorite areas within the research life cycle, and one that I'm so glad it has been growing for our own library, as well as lots of other libraries. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to step out of the library for a few years and work in evaluation for our Translational Science Center, because these tools were sort of up and coming, and I really wanted to have a deep dive into them and have a kind of a concentrated group that I could work on tracking the impact of a particular grant, you know, the grant that we had through the Translational Science Program, or the CTSA. And so that was really great, using Scopus and using SciVal and Clearbit and all the things that are out there. And there are great communities that have, of librarians and practitioners using these tools that have grown over the last few years. And it's, you can learn a lot. And one of the groups that I follow very closely, and I've learned this in terms of scholarly communication, if this is your bailiwick, if you follow the folks in Europe, it's a good place to go, because, or a good practice to do, because they're always a bit ahead of the United States. And it's definitely borne out in this particular topic in with bibliometric work and tracking the impact of research, not just publications, but all of the outputs of research. So I highly suggest that looking to our colleagues who work across the pond for that. It's really very helpful. And there's collegial as we are here, so it's all great. We do provide a lot of materials for promotion and tenure packages, and this is growing. I recently did a pretty good study with our pathology department because they were coming up for their 5-year review. And I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised that the department head came to me to ask about some of these tools that we have. Like, he thought that there might be other things that he could use besides just the number of publications that had been published. And so we worked together and put together a very nice portfolio for that, for the work that they had to do for their review. We help people maintain their author profiles and their online identities, particularly teaching junior faculty how to get that going from the very beginning, so it's not something you have to track forever. We're really pleased that all of our incoming PhD students get an ORCID account at orientation. It's a great wahoo moment for us when that became standard practice for them. Again, I mentioned that we support the public access compliance, and we support progress report needs as they come up all along the way. So that's all the different points that we come in, and I'm sure there's lots of things in the chat, which we'll come back to when I finish talking in just a few minutes. But a few factors to consider when you're trying to launch projects, and first and foremost is your staff. We're a fairly small library staff, and within a decent size university, so there's only so much, you know, that we can do, but we kind of work within our realms and do what we can with the numbers that we have and the talents that we have and the interest that we have. And time is a, you know, finite thing, and we work within our own time, and this is just something to always consider. Projects are great, and we like to dive into as many of them as we can, but of course there's only so much time to a day, and you can only devote so much time to any sort of project. So I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm sure everybody knows the challenges of balancing all of that out. So one thing to consider in terms of an environment: do you work in a research environment? Do you work in an educational environment? Do you work in a clinical, or do you work in a combination? I've worked at the medical school long enough to see us have a pretty seismic shift from being very education focused. When I was first here, the School of Medicine and the School of Nursing were the schools, you know, that really got most of the attention of the library and got, we're kind of the driving forces why we existed. But the research community here started, we had a change in upper leadership, and they brought research in. And of course, research is where money comes from. And so the research enterprise on this campus has really grown exponentially over the last few years. There, I don't know how, I've lost track of how many buildings I've seen built. And there's another one going up right now. And it's just been a bit of a shift, which in turn has also coincided with the rise of our very own department to do research support. There was a time when it wasn't a major driver within the library services, but today it is. And so we're here to support that. And then to consider all the different relationships you have and all the different people, the different stakeholders who are there, kind of going all the way back to that first story I talked about, clinicaltrials.gov. That working group is really great in the sense of they really did look at this, all of the stakeholders involved with clinicaltrials.gov. And this is the same thing we do here in terms of looking who can be our champions. You build a relationship here. I did that work for the pathology department, and I already know that department chair has spoken to other departments about doing what we can provide in terms of that impact review reports and things. So that's just how it all works. And again, not necessarily saying anything new, but just encouraging you to get out there and make those collaborations and build those partnerships. And I guess the last thing to consider is really the trends. What's coming down the line? What's the next thing that's there? We're looking ahead and we're seeing data. And I mentioned the trend that I'm really personally watching a lot is what's going to come in open science after this pandemic. It has changed us for sure. It's changed research in many ways. And when paywalls come down off of journals, I wonder, kind of like the genie out of the bottle, how do you put that back? And what's going to be the push on that? We've seen a lot of transformative agreements in terms of publishing, and what's going to happen with that. So you just kind of keep your eyes on the pulse of what's ahead, and it can often help. As I said, all the way from the very beginning with our public access mandate, we're like, this is going to become a law. We just had a feeling this was going to become a law, and laid the groundwork for it. And here we are today, all these years later. And then a few thoughts that keep me up at night. We provide a lot of niche services. And in some ways, these are super positive because they allow, there's a lot of talk, it's particularly come, also after COVID and the past few years, and recognizing the importance of diversity and inclusion and just respecting people in work a little bit better than we used to do. And bringing your whole self to work is kind of one of those things that's come out. And I think of that too, in a sense of bringing things that you like to do, things that you're interested in doing, things that you're talented in doing that might not necessarily be what's laid out in your job description, but it can offer an awful lot to your department and to the work that you do, and how you can embed yourself at these places along the research cycle. I think about my own interest in visualizations. I think about her interest in Tessa's interest in doing R and doing some coding and understanding Python and things like that. How do these are really great things that help us get in places that we weren't readily able to get in before. And so you can nurture that in people and support that in staff and help people grow in the areas that can bring in new services. But then what happens when you lose a person, right? Or when your staff move on, because people move on. And so one thing about having niche services is to kind of realize if you, the last person I hired for our department, had a complementary set of skills, and that made us a really great team. And but what happens when you have those kind of skills is what happens when the person is gone and now you don't have those skills. It's not good and it's not bad, it's just a fact, I think. And so even now, as I mentioned, that we have a position open, what is it that who is it that we want? What can that person bring that's a little bit different than what we have, because that builds our team all the better for us. I mentioned the COVID and the work environment, and I'm really while I enjoy and totally appreciate how we can work remotely and how we can have this kind of hybrid on-site some days, off-site some days, I do wonder how that will affect visibility for us on campus. You do an awful lot of work, or for many years we did a lot of work to get a seat at the table, literally a seat at the table. And I'm not 100% convinced yet that a box in the Zoom screen equals a seat at the table. And I could be proven wrong, and I'm totally open to be proven wrong, but you don't quite have the interactions. And so and you don't build the relationships in the same way. Maybe it'll be a different way and it'll come around, but I do wonder about that. And particularly when it comes to engaging new services. Though with that said, we librarians in my department launched a brand new series for our postdocs in the midst of COVID, and it's been very successful. So it's hardly a huge wall that we can't overcome, but I do think about it a little bit. And as I mentioned, the research practices that have come around COVID, what's that going to be for us? I think about that a lot. How's it going to affect research as a whole, and how's it going to affect where we as librarians engage in that cycle? What do we need to be looking for? What do we need to be training ourselves on? What do we, where do our efforts need to go? And then finally, when you're changing all the time as we are, and this is the world that we just live in today, how do you measure your success? Is it a handful of really great projects and successful collaborations and partnerships, which don't yield that necessarily that many numbers, but they're really deep rather than really broad. And how do you measure it? And does it really even matter anymore? Not sure, or how we redefine all of those things. So I have left a good bit of time. I'm open and happy to have discussion. It's what I want. I think that it's really great to engage, and Heather can ask questions, or I don't even know if we could have people could unmute themselves and chat. I don't know. I'm open for whatever. I turn it to you, Heather, to run the show from here on out.
Okay, thank you. No, we don't have the option to have anybody turn on their mics, but I can promise you there has been a lot of discussion in the chat, which I'll save and send to you afterward.
Thank you.
But there are a good number of questions that have come in, so I think maybe I'll just go through them one by one, and we'll go from there. Meanwhile, there's still things coming in, so I'll try to I'll try to navigate both. There was a question early on about sharing the slides. Will you be willing to share them?
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay, so you can, if you want, you can send them to me and I'll have them uploaded to the VFAIR site, but also I think if people want to contact you directly, they could feel free to send you an email also.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so first question, Sally, there are so many possible ways librarians can assist. In your experience, in what areas do you and others in your department spend the most time helping researchers?
I think I would say they still probably come down to more of the traditional things in terms of where can I publish? How do I deal with compliance issues around publications? Tell me about open access. Explain to me about preprints. We do a lot of that. We have a huge institutional repository, which is a big part of our group, and so Lisa does a lot of work in that area and managing that. We do publishing through our repository, so we do a lot of things along those ways as well. I think there's a lot of, so I would just say those are kind of the basics, but in terms of instruction and reaching out, and I mentioned the postdoc series that Tess and Kim were able to start over during the COVID time, that's been really great to sort of branch into some new things. And one thing I forgot to mention, I did have it in my notes, is around data teaching, because we're strictly a graduate school. We're not sitting on any other big UMass campus. We're kind of a standalone medical school, and so we don't have an undergraduate population. But one thing that did in terms of reaching students with data management skills, colleagues before me developed an elective class. So the medical school has these week-long intensive electives a couple times during the year, and they developed a data management basics class, and it's been super successful, I think, in terms of getting to, certainly not as the mid students aren't thinking about this quite as much, but we've had some other students from our biomedical sciences school who have just kind of audited the class and sat in, and they're like, we don't learn this anywhere. And so that's really a great testament to, this is, or a sign of, this is a place we need to stay active. And then in the same way, getting into those more like month-long intensive classes, we're not embedded in the curriculum in a formal kind of way, because our biomedical sciences school just does things in a different sort of classroom kind of way. But we have these opportunities of week-long classes or month-long sessions to get in on writing and things like that, which are really, really helpful.
Great, thank you. How many people are in your department that you supervise?
Right now, a total of 3, because we're down 1. So there are usually 5 of us total, and one of those people is actually our archivist. So our actual scholarly communications research support group is usually 4 people, and we're at 3 right now.
Okay, great. What software did you use to help that doctor for the high quality imaging?
I haven't done it yet because it came in right before this, but Photoshop. I'll go to Photoshop and see.
It'll be Photoshop. Okay. If you were to offer the scientific writing, would you have to hire a new role to expand?
Yeah, and this is sort of one of those things. And I mentioned the librarian who recently left. That was her thing. She was a scientific writer, and so it was super to have her, because nobody else here had that, and she has since gone back to being a science writer. It's good for her, and we're happy that she's happy. But yeah, it brings up that whole question of who do you need and how do you support? And it's certainly also not something we're thinking of doing on our own. We would definitely partner with our School of Biomedical Sciences and the School of Medicine, and they would certainly offer support as well. Definitely one of those kind of collaborative hubs, but we do vision it happening here in the library. Like this would be the hub for it to happen, because we just think that makes good sense, and we'd like to do it.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I work with our research group, and they would like me to start writing background sections of articles, but I'm not an expert in biomedical or healthcare fields. What are your thoughts about librarians writing background sections versus just providing the lit review / articles?
If they want you to do it, if somebody asked me to do it and I wasn't quite sure, this is probably, yeah, I'm just showing my own tendencies. I'd probably try to figure out as best I could how to do it. I would seek out the help of people who write, like this for a living. I'd probably read a bunch of books. I'd probably just sort of do synopses of things, and if it's something that they wanted and I had the time and willingness to kind of figure it out, I think I would. And I would definitely encourage any of my staff, if that happened, to do the same. There's some things that get certainly way out of, think of copyright. We always say, I'm not a lawyer, but this is what I know. sort of the same with writing. I'm not going to know the medicine, but I can, kind of lay some groundwork that would at least be helpful and save some folks some time, I think. So I'd be willing to pursue it. That's a total personal answer.
Sure. What project management tools do you suggest to your researchers?
Well, there are some cool ways to do Gantt charts. Lisa Palmer, who's who's our institutional repository library, so good at those things. You just load them into Excel and can do that. People use Trello, people use all kinds of things to just sort of manage. And nobody here is, again, it's one of those things that no one here is, I don't know that anyone's like gone through a project management course and has any certification in that. But I just always find that people are really thankful when you give them, here's a few things we use, they work for us, and they can kind of go pursue them. And so those are a couple that come to mind.
Okay. How do you establish expectations around your capacity? And how do you structure your services in such a way that you feel empowered to say, I'm sorry, no, when you're at capacity? That's everybody's question about everything that we do, right?
I think you have to be, I just think you have to not have any qualms about doing it. I don't, I think I'm a little jaded. I've been at this for a while. I think the longer your career goes, you're a little more comfortable with saying those kinds of things. That this is either outside of our scope, or this is just really something I can't do right now, but I can do it. Can you give me next month? Can we circle back next month and maybe do that? And just not necessarily, saying yes to everything, which I think is one of those things that we tend to want to do. It's a professional kind of trait, and people are. I've just found in my own experience that people understand. Everybody understands that that everybody has a limit. I think probably the one thing that I do that really gets to me sometimes, and I don't get angry very often, but I do have a short little thing on this progress report is due at the end of the day. And can you make this, if this article isn't compliant? And then I'm kind of, oh, for the love of Pete. But we do what we can do, for sure. Sure. But I also, my whole management style too is very much in having boundaries between work and home. I want them for myself, and I want them for my staff, and my folks will attest to the fact if they're on vacation and I catch them on their email, I give them a speaking to, because that's not what work. I don't know.
Yeah. Work-life balance is definitely a thing.
Yes.
Definitely. Okay, so there was one question and then somebody else kind of piggybacked off it. So I'm going to combine the two of these. What does collaboration with your institution's research department / office look like? And then the second person added on, specifically, I'd like to know what collaboration with institutional research departments might look like if that department is not yet on board with responsible metrics.
Ooh. That's a great question. And that's actually, that's one of those trends, the whole responsible metrics. And when I mentioned looking to our friends across the pond, Europe is ahead of us on this whole topic. And that's really where to go, and something that I know that I need to get better at understanding, like the real intricacies of it. I can speak broadly to, what's good and right within certain parameters, but, there are a lot of policies that are growing up now around this, and some ethical things that we need to address. And fortunately, I haven't had to address that with a research department yet. But so my approach would be more about raising awareness and maybe starting some programs out of the library that just sort of do that around it, using our different outreach tools and things like that, maybe offering a workshop or two to just get the conversation going. But wait, there was more to that question. There was more to that. There was more. Tell me.
What does collaboration with your institution's research department / office look like?
It looks like it looks like a relationship where everybody knows one another's names and we call on each other all the time. That's really what it looks like. Our sponsored programs office, we know them, they know us. They send directly, send people to us. Our clinical research office, because I worked over there for a while, I know those people, they know me, and they reference to us right away. And we've all developed, everybody here has developed relationships like that. And that's what it looks like. It really looks like a network of connections, if that's not a redundant saying.
There were some questions about the library carpentry classes. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the carpentries program is it kind of grew out of teaching researchers sort of how to, the philosophy about it is how you teach coding and certain things around that, and started with researchers, and then the library carpentries didn't break off, but grew out of it as a separate thing, really designed to help librarians learn how to teach certain things. There's classes on cleaning data, there's classes on using Python, there's all sorts of things like that. So go online, library carpentries. You can there are groups around, we're part of the New England regional group here. And so wherever you are in the country, there might be other groups for you, because it's a big group of people spread out. And you can find workshops where you actually learn the tools yourself, and then you can go through a process to get certified with them to be able to be an instructor. And it's a nice thing to know how to do. Yeah, thanks, Julie. Julie put in the thing there.
Yeah, the National Library of Medicine has a carpentries also, and actually NNLM offices will fund participation in that. So if you're interested, contact your RML for funding support to go to that.
Yeah.
So there was just a general question that came in, but I'm going to address it to you. That has anybody seen a significant uptick in medical students looking to publish, especially since now step 1 is pass fail?
Whoa, that's a good question, and I'm not the person to, because my interaction with med students is not the same as it is with other groups on campus. So I wouldn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either, but maybe folks in the chat could chime in if you've got any experience or knowledge about that. What tools do you use for research metrics?
We use Scopus, SciVal, metric for institutions are our primary ones.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit more about your department's outreach to postdocs? Have they been receptive, open, and what do you focus on with them?
Yeah, this was a really great program, and it's all on my team. I had nothing to do with this, but we realized that Tess realized that this was a group of people who kind of fell through the cracks when it came to instruction from the library or any so they've done our postdocs have a monthly seminar time, and I can't remember exactly how many times, Tess could throw in the chat if you want, how many times they are part of that programming each year, but there's a basic library 101 class just to help those folks know, because we don't get them in orientation, so they do that. They've done a data management kind of short little workshop for them. They've done the managing your online profile and doing ORCID, things like that. What else have they done? I think Tess is listening. If she is, she can throw some things in the chat. But I think it's been really, really successful. And I was really happy that it happened during COVID, and a time when, things were happy. It was a good thing for Zoom. It was one of those positive things that came out of it. They're recorded, they're saved on our library's YouTube channel, and people can go back and see them anytime. So really, I encourage it. It's a great group to reach out to. They were super receptive and really happy. And it's not just I mean, we went through the postdoc office, but it's certainly open to anyone to come in. So we do get students from all over, faculty and staff from all over, like that. Oh, here, thanks, Tess. Open, refine, finding data. Oh, and we're going to do data visualization coming up. So she's
Great.
just over there across the way.
It's just over there.
Going over the chat.
That was the last question that I captured. Actually, that's not true. There was one more that came in that somebody asked if you hired remote employees. So I wanted to make sure I asked.
Flexible, we have a flexible work place, but we do require some on-site.
Yeah.
Remote from the general area. So.
I think I caught all of them. I'm gonna apologize if I did miss any others that came in, but I think most of the rest was kind of like dialogue banter back and forth.
Great, I look forward to reading it.
Yeah, but let me mark this to save now. So again, Sally, thank you so much for your time and such an engaging talk this morning. We've currently got 169 people in here, not including me and you. So that's a fantastic attendance.
Thanks, and I know some of you are up pretty early, so thank you for.
Right, yeah, for our West Coast participants. So thank you again very much. And anybody, if you have follow-up questions for Sally that I missed or didn't get to, feel free to reach out to her. Yes. Email or on Twitter. She's active.
Yep, and I'm happy to connect, with other, if you're interested in any kind of, if scholarly communications isn't really your bailiwick, feel free to write and I can connect you with, there's some great working groups and there's a great MLA, relatively new caucus around ScholarCon, so I totally give a shout out to them, become part of it.
And we have our today's opening keynote session today at noon, so just about a half hour from now, with Dave DeBrunkart, very commonly known as ePatient Dave. If you haven't had the opportunity to ever hear him speak, I really want to encourage you to attend. Dave has a very interesting history and path as to how he's navigated the healthcare system and research along the way and so forth. So I really want to, of course, I want to encourage you to attend everything throughout the rest of the day, but being that the keynote is here just in a half hour, really want to encourage attendance at that. Everybody, thank you so very much for your time this morning. Sally, thank you again.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks everyone for joining in.
Great. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Bye, all.